The day my son looked me in the eye and told me to wait outside. At my own birthday dinner, at the restaurant I had taken him to every year since he was 7 years old. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him, and I thought, so this is what it comes to. My name is Robert Hale. I'm 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a civil engineer for the city of Portland, Oregon, and I built things that are still standing. Bridges, water treatment facilities, a pedestrian overpass near the Lloyd district that my wife Gloria used to point out whenever we drove past it, just to see me smile. There's yours, she'd say, every single time, like it was the first time. Gloria passed away 26 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. We had 8 weeks from the diagnosis to the end, and not a single one of those weeks felt real to me. After she was gone, I had the house, I had her garden that I didn't know how to keep alive, and I had my son Douglas. I should tell you who Douglas is. He's 40 years old, tall like his grandfather, and smart in the way that made his mother proud. He has an MBA from the University of Oregon. He works in commercial real estate and does very well for himself. I was proud of him too. I want you to know that. I was proud of the man I thought he was. He married Felicia 6 years ago. She came from money, old family money, the kind that doesn't get talked about directly, but shows up in the way a person holds a fork. She wasn't unkind, exactly, when I first met her. She was just careful. She spoke to me the way you speak to someone you're being polite to, rather than someone you genuinely want in the room. I chalked it up to nerves. Gloria liked her. That was enough for me. The two of them lived 40 minutes away in Lake Oswego, in a house they bought before the market turned. Nice neighborhood. Good schools. They had a daughter, my granddaughter Paige, who was 4 years old when Gloria died, and is now 6, and the only person in this story who has never once disappointed me. After the funeral, Douglas came by the house a few times a week. He helped me sort through Gloria's things. He sat with me while I ate dinner, because neither of us wanted to be alone. Those early months, I thought grief had done something good to us, brought us closer. I thought we were building something out of what we'd lost. I was wrong. I was being set up, and I was too deep in my own sorrow to notice. It started small. Douglas mentioned, casually, over coffee one Sunday morning, that he and Felicia had been talking. They were worried about me, living alone in a 4-bedroom house. All those stairs. What if something happened? I told him I was fine. I was 61 years old and still ran 3 miles 3 times a week. He smiled and said, of course. He just wanted me to know they were thinking about it. A few weeks later, he brought up my finances. He knew I had the pension from the city, the 401A we'd built over the years, and the equity in the house. He said he and Felicia had been talking to a financial advisor, a friend of theirs, someone named Bryson, and that there were some strategies worth exploring. Tax efficiency, estate planning. Making sure everything was set up right so that when the time came, it would all transfer smoothly. I didn't love talking about it. It felt like planning for my own disappearance. But Douglas said it was responsible. He said Gloria would have wanted me to be taken care of. He used that line more than once. It worked on me more than I want to admit. I met with Bryson twice. He was maybe 45, polished, the kind of man who wore a sport coat even when he didn't have to. He walked me through documents. There was a lot of language I didn't fully follow. I'm an engineer, not a finance man. And each time I slowed down to ask a question, he had a smooth answer ready. And Douglas was sitting right there nodding. I trusted my son. That was the long and the short of it. I trusted my son, so I signed. Over the next 4 months, Douglas became the primary account holder on 2 of my 3 bank accounts. A durable power of attorney went through that I was told was standard for estate planning at this stage of life. My investment portfolio got restructured, rolled into accounts that Bryson managed, accounts I could technically see but couldn't easily touch without Douglas's authorization. It happened gradually. By the time it was done, I had the house, my sole security, and a personal checking account with a little over $3,000 in it. And I didn't realize. I want you to understand that. I am not a foolish man. I built infrastructure for a living. I balanced project budgets in the tens of millions. But I was grieving, and I was tired, and I trusted my son. And those 3 things together made me exactly the kind of person who signs things without reading them carefully enough. The restaurant was called Hargrove's. It's in the Pearl District, the kind of place with low lighting and a wine list that takes 10 minutes to get through. Douglas had made the reservation. He said it was for my birthday. 63, nothing major, but family should be together. I wore the blazer Gloria had given me 2 Christmases ago. I took a cab because I didn't want to deal with parking. When I arrived, I saw they had a long table near the back. 8 people, Douglas and Felicia. Her parents, Bernard and Claudette, who flew in from Scottsdale, her brother Trent and his girlfriend, and 2 people I didn't recognize, who turned out to be friends of Felicia's from a junior league board she sat on. 8 chairs around a table that had been set for 8 people, I counted. I stood there at the edge of the table, looking for where to sit, and Douglas looked up and I saw something cross his face. Not guilt. Something faster than guilt. Adjustment. "Dad," he said. "Hey. Listen, we didn't realize you were coming to the whole dinner. We thought you were just stopping by for drinks first." I said I didn't know anything about just stopping by for drinks. He said maybe there'd been a miscommunication. Felicia was looking at the menu. Bernard was looking at his phone. Trent's girlfriend was the only one who looked at me with anything like discomfort. "There's a little bar area up front," Douglas said. "Why don't you grab a seat up there and we'll come find you after?" That's when Felicia looked up from the menu. She didn't raise her voice. She said it the way you say something that's been decided, something that's simply being communicated. "The table's set for the people who are staying for dinner, Robert. It's a private event. A private event, my birthday." I stood there for a moment. I'm sure people at nearby tables noticed. The maitre d' was hovering. And Douglas, my son, who I had coached Little League with and driven to the emergency room when he broke his collarbone in 9th grade and stayed up with through his first real heartbreak. Douglas looked at the menu too. I said, "All right," and I walked back to the front of the restaurant and I sat down at the bar. I ordered a scotch. I sat with it for about 15 minutes. Then I got up, left 2 20s on the bar, and walked out. I stood on the sidewalk in the Pearl District on my 63rd birthday in Gloria's blazer, and I thought about what had just happened. Not with anger, not yet. With a kind of clarity that grief had given me. The ability to see things for exactly what they were, now that I'd had practice stripping away everything I wanted them to be. I called a cab. I went home. I sat in the kitchen and I didn't eat, and I didn't sleep, not really. And sometime around 2 in the morning, I picked up my phone and called the only person I knew I could trust completely. His name is Gideon. He's been my closest friend since we were assigned to the same project out of city engineering in 1994. He's 70 now, retired and sharp in a way that only gets sharper with age. I told him what had happened. Not just the restaurant, everything. The accounts, the papers, the power of attorney, the last 4 months. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then Gideon said, "Robert, don't touch anything. Don't call Douglas. Don't say a word to anyone until you've talked to an attorney." He had a name for me by 8 the next morning. A woman named Sandra Kowalczyk, who specialized in elder financial law and had an office in Northwest Portland. He'd already called her. She would see me at 10. Sandra was in her mid-50s, direct, and had the kind of face that told you she'd heard everything and was not surprised by any of it. I laid out every document I could find. She read them carefully. She asked questions I hadn't thought to ask myself. Then she sat back and told me what I was looking at. The power of attorney was real and legally binding. However, it included provisions I hadn't been told about. Specifically, it granted Douglas the authority to make financial decisions on my behalf with minimal oversight. The accounts had been restructured in ways that would take time, but were not irreversible. The investment portfolio was trickier. She'd need to bring in a forensic accountant to trace where exactly the assets had moved. "Is this fixable?" I asked her. "Yes," she said. "But you need to act now, and you need to act quietly." For 3 weeks, I did exactly that. I didn't call Douglas. I didn't mention the restaurant. I went about my life, grocery store, coffee with Gideon, watering Gloria's garden badly, and in the background, Sandra worked. She filed to have the power of attorney reviewed. She put a legal hold on the investment accounts pending forensic audit. She contacted the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation regarding Bryson's conduct. The hardest part was not saying anything. Douglas called twice that week. The first time, I let it go to voicemail. He said he hoped I wasn't upset about the dinner, that it had been a misunderstanding, that Felicia sent her apologies. The second time I answered and told him everything was fine. I could hear relief in his voice. He thought I had accepted it. That's what he thought of me. Someone who accepts things. He was about to find out otherwise. Sandra called me on a Thursday morning and told me it was time. The forensic accountant had finished. There was evidence that Bryson had moved a significant portion of my investment portfolio, just over $340,000, into fee-heavy instruments that benefited his own commission structure, with Douglas's written authorization. More importantly, the documentation showed that the power of attorney had been presented to me under a misrepresentation of its scope and terms. In Oregon, that's grounds for revocation. That same afternoon, Sandra filed an emergency petition with the Multnomah County Circuit Court to revoke the power of attorney on grounds of fraud and undue influence. She also filed a formal complaint against Bryson with the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. I had one more account move to make. I drove to my credit union, the one account that had never been touched, the one I'd opened in 1988 with Gloria before we were even married, and I spoke to the branch manager myself. I explained the situation. I left with what I needed. The court granted an emergency temporary order 48 hours later. Douglas found out when he tried to access one of my accounts and couldn't. He called me at 7 in the morning. I let it ring. He called again. I picked up. "Dad, what's going on? I'm getting errors when I try to log into your—" "I know," I said. "I spoke to an attorney. There's a court order. You'll be receiving documentation." There was silence. Then, "What are you talking about?" "I was trying to protect you, that's all this ever was." "Douglas." I kept my voice steady. I built the Morrison Bridge reinforcement project under budget and 6 weeks ahead of schedule. I am not a man who needs protection. I am a man who made the mistake of trusting someone who saw that as an opportunity. I know what was done. Sandra knows what was done. The court knows. Bryson's license is under review, and I am done having this conversation. I hung up. 2 months later, the court finalized the revocation of the power of attorney. The investment accounts were restored and placed under independent management with a fiduciary advisor Sandra recommended. Bryson surrendered his securities license as part of a consent agreement with FINRA. He did not face criminal charges, which I will admit disappointed me, but Sandra told me the civil outcome was unusually swift and complete, and she'd seen far worse cases drag on for years. Douglas and I have not spoken since that morning phone call, except through attorneys. He did send a letter, typed, not handwritten, which told me something, in which he said he believed he had been acting in my best interest and that he was sorry if I felt differently. The word "if" did a lot of work in that letter. I read it once and put it away. Felicia sent nothing. Paige, my granddaughter, started first grade this fall. Her mother's mother brings her by to see me on the first Sunday of every month, which was something Claudette arranged quietly and without making a point of it, and for that I am genuinely grateful. Paige has Gloria's way of noticing small things. She spotted a wren in the backyard last month and stood very still, watching it for almost 5 minutes. 6 years old. Standing completely still, just watching. I keep the garden going now. Not perfectly. I still can't grow the climbing roses the way Gloria did. And every spring I read the same articles and make the same mistakes. But the lavender comes back on its own, and the kitchen herb box is thriving. And when Paige comes over, she likes to pick the mint and smell it. I run my 3 miles. I have coffee with Gideon on Tuesday and Friday mornings. I had lunch last week with Sandra, which was not strictly professional, but she seemed like someone worth knowing, and I have reached an age where I don't waste time second-guessing that. My attorney is currently pursuing a civil recovery action against Douglas and Bryson jointly. It may take another year. Sandra says the outcome looks reasonable. I'm not counting on it. What I'm counting on is the Tuesday morning I woke up. After all of this was over, and went downstairs and made coffee and stood in the kitchen in the quiet, and understood that the house was mine, and the accounts were mine, and the decisions about my life were mine, and that I had taken them back. Gloria used to say that the only thing worse than being hurt by someone you love is staying hurt. She meant it as a reason to forgive. I don't know that I've gotten that far yet with Douglas. I don't know if I will, but I understood what she meant by it better now. that staying hurt is a choice, that carrying it is a weight you pick up every morning on purpose, and that at some point you have to decide whether you're done carrying it. I'm not done yet, but I'm working on it. And if you're watching this, and there's a moment somewhere in your own story that feels like that restaurant, that moment where someone you raised, someone you gave everything to, asks you to wait outside while they sit at the table you paid for. I want you to hear this. You don't wait outside. You go find an attorney. You call your Gideon. You act quietly. You act carefully. And you act like the person you have always been. Because that person is still in there, and grief didn't take them, and neither did they. Share this if it reaches you. Someone out there needs to know it can be taken back.